going to have to act if we want to live in a different world.
Hello, I'm Victor Von Zoom, and welcome to EdgeCast number 18. With me is the artist formerly known as Tyler Durden, Tyler Clark.
Hello. Good evening.
And to bring the cringe, Garam.
Wait, whoa. I'm not second chair? That's fucking it. I'm defecting to chaos. More blood for the blood god!
Yeah, internet Bloodsports are pretty terrible these days, aren't they?
No fucking shit.
Like, they're about as cringy as that intro. Like, and I feel bad because they have masqueraded themselves on, like, they're managing to be political, but all, like, they're like YouTube politics, but also like, oh, it's just entertainment at the same time, and it's like, no, you're just providing a platform for one party that you like to, like, have debates that the other party can't stand up to because the entirety of the audience is controlled. But, you know.
Well, I wouldn't say controlled, but the comment section is clear. There's two definite camps, and they're just screaming at one another, and that's...
And one of the definite camps is not being supported by anybody. Well, yeah, but like one of the definite camps is not being supported by anybody, and the people who host the internet Bloodsports and the often victorious guests like Richard Spencer or JF and everybody, all of them are very obviously like already they've already won by the time they showed up. Like the internet Bloodsports, they're not even Bloodsports. They're not really debates. They're just there for people to fucking shitpost at each other. And pretend that there's actually a fight, but in reality, it's just them laughing at the liberalists. Which, you know, I can understand because the liberalists are kind of... They went from, we're going to try and legitimately be a political party into a fucking joke, but whatever.
Well, I'm not too surprised this is the behavior of the internet, because this has been the behavior of broadcast media for decades, handling political debates, with the exception of, like, say, Charlie Rose. And if you recall what was it about 6 months ago, it was the Ben Shapiro Sink Uger debate, and it was so clear that everyone in the audience, well, almost everyone in the audience, was a Ben Shapiro fan, and it was so telling in that one. Just a few years before that, it was Sink Uger debating, blanking her name, but it was another conservative a journalist, and it was an opposite situation that the audience was packed.
Yeah. Well, like the Ben, that one I have to look up because I know the debate you're talking about, but I'm also blanking on her name. But I have to look that up to see how it was. But I know that like the Ben Shapiro debate is like I agree with you on that, but it's kind of a hard case to make because if you look at the debate on its face, Cenk spent a lot of time just insulting the audience.
Well, yeah, I mean, his tactic was at one point just to start chanting USA, ironically. And
well, like, he also was like, I know math is hard for conservatives, but and it was like he was making like valid points that Ben did not actually have any refutations of. He just skipped over them with his fast talking. But like, it was also like the audience was never going to warm up to him because Cenk immediately like just started like shitting on the audience with comments like that.
Because Cenk is used to the concept of the audience being in his favor.
Yeah,
and
because
this
he
was,
runs
I
the
think,
show.
one of the first times, if not the first time, he's had to deal with a hostile audience. It's clear he doesn't know how to convince people who are skeptical of his position.
Other than calling him stupid, which is
retarded. Yeah, let me just call you stupid until you agree with me. I wonder how many people are going to agree with you.
Yeah,
that's how you do it nowadays. You attack your own audience, and then you wonder why they're so pissed off.
Well, that's what happened with fucking Richard Spencer. Was like Richard Spencer didn't, when he did that first debate against Sargon, and I mean, internet Bloodsports wasn't really in its nascent stage. It just kind of hit stride because it had been around for a while, like since around January or like December. Like Tonka Saw had been doing shit like that, but like the problem is everybody takes all these clips out of context and then cycles it around to the fans that are already circle jerking about it. So they're like, Richard Spencer called Sargon stupid. He wins the argument. It's like, but he didn't make an argument for how smart he didn't make an argument that was like going over Sargon's head. He was just saying, Sargon, I don't think you're smart enough to understand what I'm talking about. It was like, with no context at all. It was just, he just called Sargon stupid, and everybody is like, this is the truth now. And while I do believe Sargon is not that fucking smart, like, he's a lot less smart than he thinks he is at the very least. Like, that's still ridiculous. Like, to just say, oh, well, I called him stupid, therefore I win. But if you name call me, it's name calling. But if I name call you and get this clip taken out of context, it's absolutely true. And it's like, so you're saying that the audience is not being controlled in this case. The audience is not already a bunch of alt-writers that are just astroturfing. It's not a bunch of people that have already made up their minds and are just there to watch them being shit on. And that's why, like, Andy Worski and all the other people, like, brought out the, like, have wheeled out the fucking, oh, it's just entertainment defense. Like, Jim is backing them up with them, and it's like, no, they're all just getting a buck out of it. I don't know if you guys have been following, but they've been making, like, thousands of dollars a night off of superchats for this fucking bullshit. And, like, all these people that are, like, getting hammered right and left are just signing on because the politicos of the group, like the JFs, the Richard Spencers, they're pushing their message and getting it across on YouTube on a wider scale because this is something that's piercing the bubble of, like, their opposition, because it's an open debate. And then the leftier guys keep getting on it because not only because they're trying to push their own message on it, but they also all want to get a buck. And it's just completely fucking out of control. Because I don't think anything productive is being done about it, and everybody's acting like it is. And then if there is anything productive out of it, it's just nothing but the alt-right gaining traction by essentially cheating at a competition that was already rigged in their favor.
Well, okay, you're talking about things being rigged. How is that any different than what broadcast news has been doing for decades?
But that's the problem, though. Is that like this is
a conservative and have three like Democrats on the other side just to beat up on the one.
Yeah, like no, that's
at
what broadcast. This way,
it's a 50-50. It's a one-on-one.
It's not a 50-50 when you control the audience. Like if you just meme the audience into thinking that you have a point when like none of them can actually discuss what the fuck you mean, and then all of your figureheads are either they're either lunatics or obviously shills. It's like, I don't think JF...
ignore the audience. You can't control the audience. You can't control what...
Well, no, you can control the audience because that's what they're doing. And it's like, the point of this is that this is the internet. This is YouTube. This is supposed to be the platform of free speech.
The audience?
Because
other than inviting their own fans.
That's what they're doing. They have nothing but people that are already positioned to be that are already pro one side. You don't have a bunch of people that are like, I'm neutral on this, but I've been convinced Richard Spencer. It's a bunch of people that already liked Richard Spencer, already liked JF, already like this, that just sit there and push the same memes over and over again. That's why people like...
That sounds a lot like broadcast news.
Yes, but broadcast news, this is a different place than broadcast news. This is supposed to be, the platform of free speech and the exchange of ideas, not a fucking controlled news station. And what is your argument here, Daryl? That I'm not going to be surprised. Like, I'm not saying to be surprised. I'm saying you should understand this is a bad thing.
I'm saying it's not any worse than the crap that's already out there right now.
I think it's worse because it means that there's no actual alternative. Because the caveat of broadcast news was that indies would always be able to branch out on their own. Tyler.
I think the bigger problem in general is the problem is less, in my opinion, that they're setting the people up. It's more like you have a problem. What the internet used to be back in the days, you can open up your idea and you can discuss it. That's gone. Now the people are going with a bias into that argument. Try actually to make their point. So what is going to happen if people with a good fan base are making such discussion? It is like how is that guy called? Mr. Metaco made a very good example in terms of with those talk shows back in the 90s. you knew what is going to happen, and that is what those Bloodsports actually represent. The people know it's a fucking shit show, but they just want to have that entertainment. That's what it is about. It isn't any more about discussion. It isn't any more about the topic. It's just entertainment, just shitting on each other, and that is the sad thing. Or on the other side, you can also look at that. That's the evolution of YouTube. That the bigger YouTube has become, the bigger the YouTube market has become, because the new generation are coming up. They want to be entertained. They don't give a flying fuck about broadening the worldview or something like that. It's over basically, and Bloodsports is the beginning of, who cares about the topic. I just want to see somebody at each other's throat.
Yeah, except my problem is that even if the majority of the audience is there just to see people at each other's throat, they're getting a show that's already basically staged. Because they don't get good guests to represent opposing views. They get for the alt-right stance, they get established politicos dealing with YouTube celebrities that are YouTube celebrities off of the back of other YouTube celebrities. Sargon, Sargon's not an example of that, because Sargon is kind of was a big deal for a while, at least in YouTube. But it's when they're doing stuff oh yeah, we're gonna have V and Arch Warhammer debate Richard Spencer and JF. I was are you fucking serious? They even admitted that nobody fucking knew who Arch Warhammer was. And we're acting, and then we're acting yeah, this is no, this is not even even beyond the scope of this is a debate. You can't set it up it's some kind of boxing match. It's you guys know that this is not a fair fight. You're putting a total nobody and a guy who's turned himself into a lolcow up against an established talking head in the real world, and the guy who is essentially the intellectual center of the alt-right on YouTube.
This is what we're used to for decades, so I'm not too surprised that the same behavior is manifesting itself again.
No, I guess from that perspective, you have a fair point. It's just, it annoys me because, this is the kind of thing that, I understand why it could be happening again, but, the entire point of everybody using YouTube now and, people not, is because people aren't going to tackle these issues on TV, and TV's a controlled medium. But, of course, the alt-right is just going to is going to attempt to control the fucking narrative anyway, and then act like they're not controlling the narrative, and then just hide behind the whole, this is all cringe, we're just laughing at you because you're dumb. Here's all the reasons why you're dumb, because we say so, and everybody believes these memes that we have said. That's all they've essentially done since Sargon started this liberalist thing. It's until
but that's what they're gonna do anyways. They laugh at everyone and go, they've been doing, hey, look at us, we're so smart because we disagree with all of you. They've been doing that for years now.
Yeah, and I'm just pissed off everybody's buying it. Anywhere. And now people that were supposed to have a more neutral perspective on it are buying into it because it's making them lots of money. I'm mad about obvious things that are obvious. I get it, but still.
So this is my hope with the internet Bloodsports, is it's just another chip into the mainstream media. Because if people are curious about this shit, and they're going to be going to these basically internet Bloodsports videos rather than sitting down and watching the broadcast media. And at least with the internet Bloodsports being hopefully more or less an even punching match between two people one-on-one rather than a one-on-three, we can get rid of the mainstream news and get back to a system where people can at least sit down and make up their own damn mind rather than it being a completely manufactured thing. Because don't forget, the mainstream people, they get to edit everything after the debate.
Yeah,
it's like the Kathy Newman thing, or better yet, more recently than that, the Jordan Peterson with Vice News. They have an hour to 2 hour interview, and they pull out one fucking line. But at least with the internet Bloodsports, you get to see the entirety of the debate in its full context, and it's out there. It's public. And if someone tries to manipulate the news, like the mainstream news has been doing for apparently years, decades now, we're always going to have the original video in its full context online. So it's a hell of a lot more difficult to manipulate the political discussions. I'd rather have the internet Bloodsports than the endless panel TV shows.
Yeah, but I would also rather, internet comedians that pretend that they're not part of the that they don't have a political stake in the game. They don't have a dog in the fight. Would actually be honest. Like the crux of the issue with this is that they have high power names coming into them, like Sargon, like Richard Spencer, like Jim, and then like Sargon and Richard Spencer, credit where credit is due. They actually lay out on the table what they're about, even if I think Spencer is still disingenuous. But
yeah, and for the people who don't know, Jim is Internet aristocrat / yes, Mr. Medicare.
Like everybody knows him as Jim because his original account was Jim81 Jim, and
not everyone knows that.
Well, they have enough archives of him now that it's like relatively common knowledge amongst his fan base. But which is like a lot of people now. But like the thing with Jim is that he's this entire time he's been defending this stupid behavior, and he keeps pretending that he doesn't have a stake in the game. But like without fail, no matter what happens, he always rushes to the defense of the more conservative side of things and laughs at anybody who they could construe as being left. Which means
wait, Jim just sit there and laugh at people?
No, he's never
done that before.
Well, no, that's the thing, is that like he acts like I'm just here to sit here and laugh at people, but like at the end of the day, he's choosing a side. And like that was what happened with the Louis Levi thing, where like Louis Levi like Sargon was trying to be his friend, but Louis Levi fucking mad dogged him when they had that happen. And everybody cut the context of that out and acted like Jim completely trounced everybody. It was like, no, he made a bunch of points. He didn't take a stand. Like, he takes stands on stuff and then says he doesn't take stands. He picks a side and then says he doesn't pick sides. He, selectively chooses who to make fun of and then says, I make fun of everybody. And then tries to use cringe as a cudgel for all of this stuff when it's like, no, you don't like it personally because it's against your ethos, and you're too much of a pussy to admit that you don't have, your own politics are, you don't like these things that affect it on a political level, but you're not going to admit what your actual politics are because you're disingenuous. Like,
I've always considered Jim a political commentator on the internet.
Well, a lot of people didn't until way after Gamergate, because up until Gamergate, he was just a dude he was just like this internet investigator type who just, showed you weird shit on the internet like SPACs or like furries and shit. And now it's just this shit show. Like the example of the other day was he essentially picked a fight with Honey Badger Radio over Dr. Randomer Cam being autistic, and then basically bullied the shit out of Allison when she came on to defend. She came on one of the internet Bloodsports shows, I think it was with Tonkasaw, to defend Dr. Randomer Cam, and then they were like, well, why do you want to be on here? And she was honest and said, we have an advocacy organization and we want to get more, attention to it. And then he was just like, I'm not going to debate with you now. I'm not going to talk to you about this. You're just a shill. And it's like, as opposed to fucking like all these people that are pretending that these politics don't affect them, but they're making all the super chat money off of hosting debates for them, as opposed to you, Jim, yourself, who started a Patreon because you gave yourself lung cancer and you won't just own up to that because you need to stop every 5 minutes in the middle of your streams to have another goddamn cigarette. It was fucking ridiculous. And the hypocrisy was tangible in the regards of all these things, but nobody wants to point that out. Nobody wants to stop and say, all right, so if Jim is supposed to be this neutral party, how come he's never actually made fun of any of the conservative people? He doesn't make fun of the fact that Richard, most of 8 poll thinks Richard Spencer is a closet homosexual and is actually pushing a gay agenda. He doesn't fucking point out the shenanigans that went down with JF. He doesn't talk about the shenanigans that went those shenanigans that went down with JF and the child thing because that's old news. He doesn't point out the shenanigans that went down with Mike Enoch. He doesn't make fun of any of that. he's like he has all the time in the world to make videos, to make all of his videos be about either like internet drama shit, which is like in his milieu, or he then spends all the time showing up on internet Bloodsports just to curb stomp people that were already being shit canned. It's retarded.
Well, 9/10 of the shit that goes on the internet is retarded. But
you know what my point is, Yaram. Stop doing this like I'm your dad and I'm not fucking invested in this point, so I'm not going to take a side thing.
You're acting like this is like a surprise, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not surprised at all. Like, yes, he is a kind of a shill. He is kind of a douche. I remember liking him at one point and then just giving up because all he did all day long was shit on stuff. And it's like, okay, if you're against all this crap, what are you for? And that's where I gave up with the guy.
I'm not going to tell you because that's cringe.
Yeah. It's just like I got the joke. Ha ha ha! Everyone's dumb except me. Ha ha ha! I'm like, I don't have the time of day for your douchebaggery.
It's the strategy, actually, the argumentative strategy is more like, it's just a meme. Don't take it seriously.
I had a conversation with a friend, a guy in the Loves Black Crusade game the other night, Slavic. I had a conversation with him last night about this, where it was like, yeah, it's like, have you guys ever stopped and noticed that, like, the people who say it's just a game are always the same people that are either beating you at the game, or they want you to, or they have an invested interest in you stopping playing the game, and like nobody ever says it's just a game if they actually understand what's going on. They only ever say it when they want to, like,
they're the most invested in winning the game.
Yeah, they always want to, or they're invested in you losing, rather. Like, they want to debase you valuing the game so that they don't have to, like, deal with, like, so they don't actually have to make a real argument. And it's the same thing here, like Tyler said. It's a good point, Tyler. But
yeah, it's so
sad
much of it. Yeah, we really should extend the bucket or umbrella term of professional fart sniffers to people like Jim. And,
people like Jim, people like Sargon, people like the fucking Hollywood.
Oh yes, the Oscars.
Yeah.
Oh jeez. The original professional fart sniffers.
Yeah.
And
we made our own award show to give ourselves awards for things that we did ourselves.
And then we're really fucking upset because nobody wants to watch. Like, did you hear that it was the lowest rated Oscars in 44 years?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they dug that own grave for themselves. I mean, like they've been slowly but surely, like, like turning into the Ouroboros of fucking yourself in the ass as far as how they've been handling everything. Because, like, before this, it was the stupid Emma Watson shit, and then before that, it was let's have Chris Rock host the Oscars, and then have him basically banned from the after party because he hurt the egos of a bunch of celebrities with, like, really, really light, like, very, very light biting jokes.
Well, they can dry those tears from their face with their $100 bills.
Well, that's what they always do. I mean, I don't know. I think nobody wants to watch the Oscars anymore because, like I said, the internet is more entertaining now, and people are just tired of seeing Sean Penn try to strong arm comedians because he got his fifi hurt.
Or just them standing up there going, "We make movies just to piss off Mike Pence," and it's like, great, and where am I in any of this? Okay, so you're making movies just to piss somebody off. That's not an argument why I should want to go see your movie. That's just an argument of why you're a jackass.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, it's still upsetting because there's still some, like, I know Del Toro got some flack for stuff, like Guillermo del Toro showed up, and, like, I don't know why the fuck he has such a loyalty to the rest of Hollywood when they've basically shafted him forever. But, I mean, that's just Hollywood for you. It's like, you say thank you, sir, for this ass fucking, or we're not going to give you more money, or we're going to like watch you starve to death because we control the media.
It's Hollywood. Everyone has the same bloody opinion. Yeah. And they expect everyone else in Hollywood to have the same bloody opinion. And they don't understand that when they screw other people over, they might not like you. They're just like, wait, what? I'm not surprised. I mean, Del Toro gets up there and it's like, movies should bring people together. And he's apparently getting like some flack for that. Like, I feel sorry for the guy because he needs Hollywood to make his living, but at the same time, holy crap, they could. It's like anyone in Hollywood that. I sometimes wonder, is it because Del Toro doesn't play the SJW game nearly hard enough?
No, he definitely plays the SJW game hard. I mean, Del Toro is a weird case in the sense that he's extremely Mexican in that, like, I know, like, everybody says, like, the racially based class system of SJWs is like what they all believe in, but like Del Toro comes from a racially based class system.
So they keep on confusing him for being their pool boy, and
no, it's that he makes movies that are good, and they hate him for that.
I wouldn't say they're good; they're successful in a way that they don't understand it. It's, for example, like with Pacific Rim, that movie.
I don't know. Pacific Rim and all the Hellboy movies were pretty good. I also liked Kronos. I don't like.
I wouldn't say Pacific Rim was good in itself. It was a fucking good idea, just big monsters punching big robots. It was entertaining as fuck, but it wasn't successful in the West. It was severely successful in Japan and how it's called China.
No, it wasn't successful in Japan. Japan completely failed the entirety of West. China. Yeah, China. It was super successful in China. It was fucking weird how successful it was in China.
Yeah. And that is what they don't get. And Guillermo del Toro is doing what he thinks is good because he knows his fan base, I think. He was most likely expecting that it wouldn't be that good in terms of in the West. But the people do like his stuff, like Hellboy or, yes, what did Kronos I didn't watch, but I think that is the bigger thing. He's doing his stuff, he's doing his ideas, and they're kind of successful, and he doesn't need anybody. Even if they would kick him out of Hollywood, there would be enough people saying, "Oh, yeah, he makes entertaining movies." And he doesn't. At least in how it's called Pacific Rim, there wasn't a political agenda. It was just get over with the shit. I want robots and monster pies. I want to see monsters and robots.
Yeah, like the closest his movies ever got to political was like The Shape of Water, and like most of the people who said that Shape of Water was super political, like I'm trying to remember, like 1776L or whatever. Like most of them were basically like came off as nuts because they said stuff that was directly conflicting with things that actually happened in the movie. But like, yeah, that is a thing, is that Del Toro doesn't really make very politicized movies, despite the fact that he himself is a very political director, and he's very close with a lot of like the other liberal elites in Hollywood, despite the fact that he's Mexican and like he's very, very Mexican. But I don't know. It's how do we get on the Oscars? The Oscars were fucking lame anyway.
Professional fart sniffers.
Yeah, I was thinking about professional fart sniffers, and then I think Jim, I think Sargon, I think V, and then I think Oscars, and I'm just like, who else deserves to burn in hell? The entirety of the West Coast. Just like, yeah, but
Sargon just can't stay out of the news.
Yeah, he's getting the crap kicked out of him lately.
Well, people keep on literally trying to kick the crap out of him.
Oh yeah, he had the Antifa shit, but then like the Antifa shit was funny because it's like even if everybody was like, haha, this happened to him, it's still Antifa, so everybody hates Antifa. But the worst thing was like when he did the beer hall push for he did a beer hall push for the liberalist group, and like nobody showed up. And then there was like one of that dude, I think his name is Godwinson or something, like followed him around with a camcorder and like saw that he was nervously pacing around the fucking like nervously pacing around the block, trying to get his shit together to go in, and then he showed up, and there was like one woman and like 5 trannies and like 30 sweaty fat dudes when he was expecting like 500 people or something.
So what, they just went to a bar?
Yeah, they went to a bar that he had rented out with donation money. And was like, we're starting a 20-year plan now. Like, what the fuck? And then, like, it got to the point of parody where it was like a while later Andy Worski trademarked the term liberalists. So now he's like threatening legal action against Sargon if he tries to do anything with it. But
he never came up with the term. Sargon came up with the term.
He didn't come up with the term. It's not an original term. It's just an obsolete. It's an obsolete word in the English language, and like he didn't copyright it. He trademarked it, as far as I believe. I have to go rewatch the video again because like everything else Andy Worski produces, like everybody acts like Andy is like super intelligent, and then it sounds like some stoner I knew in high school, like trying to pretend he's like part of the gang, like part of the debate club. It fucking annoys me. Like, I understand that the man has struggles, but like I can't fucking believe that there are people that are literally just that he's making like $2,000 to $10,000 every Bloodsports to like, you know, dyslexically read out questions he can't like by people whose names he can't pronounce. It's like I don't
just fucking look at my name. How many people do you think you can pronounce my name?
Yeah, but your name is not. Your name is just a name. It's not a word itself. Like he was the one who was like he couldn't pronounce Marcus Aurelius properly at one point. I'm like, fucking kill me. It's like I know I'm a mush-mouthed piece of shit, but this is ridiculous.
Most Latin names are freaking easy to pronounce. Scipio Africanus.
It's only Scipio Africanus because stay out of my continent.
Latin names are quite easy because it's a dead language.
It's a base language for all the languages we're speaking now.
Yeah, going back to the dead language, exactly. There's no one left to correct you. Therefore, you were right.
There's no old Latin teachers with like a ruler and 50 cats in their house and no husband to like explain to you why the language is important.
It is that. It's nice to know. But on the other side, yeah, you can't do wrong with a language.
Yeah. But, I don't know.
Sargon still has Antifa's flag. Antifa is still a bunch of cucks.
That's hilarious. Fucking
it was
playing Capture the Flag with Sargon of Akkad. Fucking talk about a fail state.
And getting thrown out. Did you see? Okay, there's a video from outside the event, and I just loved how the 2 guards throwing the Antifa people out the event. One of them was black, and the other one I think was a Muslim. And I'm like, that's just the perfect point of irony. Like, if you guys really believe in your collectivist ideology, does it not bug you that you have 2 of these victimized groups throwing you out on your ass? And then they are trying to fight these 2 oppressed minorities. I'm just laughing. It's like, but they're oppressed minorities. What are you doing trying to punch them? Yeah. It was great. So they gave up trying to beat up on Sargon, and they literally tried to go and fight a elderly woman in Portland. So Christina Hoff Summers, #based mom, was giving a talk at it was Lewis and Clark Law School, and Antifa showed up and tried to cause a ruckus, and I just thought that was hilarious. It's like, so they tried to fight a middle-aged, overweight man in the UK and lost, so now they've stepped down and they're trying to fight like elderly women.
Yeah, kind of reminds me of what happened with Steven Crowder. It's like I know you wanted to talk about Steven Crowder and his banning, but I don't give a fuck about Steven Crowder because he's a piece of shit. And everybody's forgotten that back in the day, he actually got called out by... He got successfully called out by the Amazing Atheist of all people. Because the dude fucking doctored a video where he started a fight with a union a guy at a union protest, and then claimed he was a union thug, and then like said that he was going to press charges on him, or he had to show up and fight him in the octagon. When it was like, no, you just got knocked the fuck out by a dude who was like 20 years older than you because you fucking picked a fight with him, and then didn't think he would actually take a swing, and then you fucking edited out in the video the part where you pushed him to the ground, and then tried to claim victimhood. And it's like, Crowder has always been a shitbag, and he's always used the same tactics as that forever, but like everybody, but you know, he's cool now because he's conservative, and he's a comedian, he can get away with it. It's just comedy, bro. It's like he's trying to like pretend that he's actually a comedian so he can hide behind that defense, and it's like, he's not a fucking comedian. It's just... that's what happened with him. It's like everybody, like, there's all these people that keep picking fights they are totally unqualified to actually do with. I mean, it's funny coming from us, but nobody pays attention to us anyway.
I don't think we're literally trying to pick a fight where we have to punch people in the face.
Although, yeah, that's true. But I mean, it would be funny if like somebody like sees one of our many casts calling out Kraut or something, and Kraut like decides to debate us. Like, I don't know if we ever talked about that, but that was really funny that like how long both Tyler and I were moderators or admins on his various servers, and he didn't know that we were on a podcast. We routinely shit on him because he just like was so fucking clueless.
It's not clueless. The problem with Kraut is he wants always to... He's the kind of guy who thinks when he has the group behind him, he's powerful.
Yeah. So what you're saying, he's a coward?
To some degree, yes.
Yeah.
So just speaking of Crow and T, I do this periodically and look him up, and
he came back. I know that happened.
Yeah, last 30 days he lost like 1,000 subscribers. So I'm gonna go on and say he's not producing content, so people just haven't unsubscribed. Well, this usually what happens when people stop producing content. People don't even realize the person isn't even on their feed, so you just kind of like stay at about the same level.
Yeah, and then he comes back, and they're like, oh yeah, I forgot, I hate this dude, and unsubscribe.
Yeah, but this is, like stagnant. So, whatever. Yeah. Croden T is out of the picture right now, but maybe we should be a little more clear on this entire Steven Crowder thing. So this is a bit of a developing story. I don't know all the facts. So
I'll let you guys handle this one, because like I said, I hate that man. I don't give a shit about him.
Yeah, so
I don't follow him, to be honest. So I know his name. I watched some videos, but it's like too much time wasting on him.
Yes, there's a lot of time. So this is Steven Crowder's side of the story, as best I can tell, is he sent one of his employees down to South by Southwest to go film inside one of the official gender non-conforming events. He put the video up on YouTube and linked the video on his Twitter. Twitter immediately took the video down and banned his account. It was like a day or something for privacy violation. The way he has his account set up on Twitter is there's also scheduled tweets. So when you're temporarily suspended on Twitter, you can't access your account. So his scheduled tweets went out. So then they hit him up on a 7-day ban for scheduled tweets. So I'm not quite sure how the hell that's supposed to work, because that suggests that it's an internal YouTube system, and I don't know much about the scheduled tweeting stuff. So if that's their system, and they've set up some process where you can tell Twitter to tweet something out in 12 hours. So if they're banning him for a system that's a normal feature, that just seems kind of scummy. But anyways, so Crowder basically got banned for 7 days as a result of this video he put out because of a privacy violation. I don't know if there's anything controversial in the video, but it sounds like the concern is that it showed people's faces and people could be identified, but this is Texas, and Texas is a single-party consent state, which means in a public venue, you can film people, and you don't need their consent. And I think Twitter said that it violated their terms of service, and it just...
Texas violated our terms of service.
Yeah, no, it's kind of hard to tell because, of course, the rules on Twitter and YouTube are so damn vague these days that...
They're always vague. It's just that nobody paid attention to them then because they weren't enforced in these specific occasions. And, like, they were made vague on purpose so they could enforce them now. I'm trying to remember who it was, but I know that Twitter banned, like, a congressman. Like, it was a congressman or some, like, major politician got banned because he was saying stuff that was, like, that Twitter didn't deem kosher.
Well, oh, come on, they still have Farrakhan on Twitter. I don't think they can claim any neutrality when they've got someone literally tweeting out some pretty heinously anti-Semitic stuff.
Oh, like, but, they don't... I forget what it was, but I think it was like a local... It was a local politician or like the mayor of a major city or something that got banned off of Twitter for complaining about a problem everybody knew existed.
Mm-hmm. So this is the second time Crowder has now been having legal troubles with Twitter. Crowder worked with Twitter to set up an ad campaign with them, and Twitter put the ad campaign together, they launched it, and Twitter turned around and said that violates our terms of service and shut them down. So it sounds like he's going to have quite a bit of fun suing Twitter, especially on that one, because you can't just put together an ad campaign and then ban somebody. It's like, basically they took Crowder's money and ran.
Yeah.
So they either have to say that, their employee was incompetent, in which case, well, refund Crowder the money, or they have to admit that they don't even know what their own rules are, to which I'd say, well, let's face it, at this point, I think a lot of us have concluded that there are no rules. You've just got a group of people who have certain political beliefs, and anything that comes across their desk that violates those personal political beliefs, they just ban. They don't care. They're just inherently biased people.
I can see that.
I mean, as I said, the rules are vague, and they've always, as you said, they've always been vague. It'd be nice to actually know exactly what the heck the rules were.
It sounds like Twitter is acting like a thought police, and it took the time to get something new. Unlike
well, yeah, but the problem is that every attempt to make something new, people just ignore. It's like, that's why I kind of brought up the congressman and everything that got banned. It's like, that should have been a call to war for people, and everybody just was like, oh wow, that was horrible, we should do something about it, and then like next day nobody gave a fuck. Nobody
the next problem is, let's say you do try and create another platform. Look what happened to Gab.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like, Gab is still a thing, and hardly anybody still uses it.
But every time someone tries to create an alternative to these platforms, you've got those allied systems that kick in, and they go, well, we don't like your politics. It's like we've all been shoved into the same damn walled garden, and everyone's trying to... Well, a lot of people are trying to get out, and you've got these guys at the top of the wall with pointy sticks going, you can't get out, we have to keep you in. It's really is starting to look like a 1984 hellhole.
Well, I mean, I can agree with that, but at the same time, I would argue that there's still, like, plenty of people that just don't want to get out. They're like, no, or that want to get out, but then just don't. Like, they just sit there and go, I really should get out of here. Oh,
and
well.
It was funny enough, something Crowder was ranting about was, he's finding it difficult to get support from the conservative community because they just... Apparently, his line was they were complaining that this wasn't constructive, what he did. And he's sitting there, it's like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. You guys ain't doing nothing. I'm trying to do something, and you're throwing me under the bus because you're being complete douches. His argument is basically, why do you think YouTube and Twitter are going after us? Because it's working. You say it isn't constructive, Crowder goes, but this is constructive, and that's why we're under attack. It's the same thing with Milo. The reason why Milo was being attacked was he was going to universities and getting packed auditoriums, and people saw that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I think as a result, went, wait, there's conservatives or libertarians in this university?
There's centrists?
Yeah, and all of a sudden, what we've seen now is, I'm hearing about it more and more, these young Republican clubs on campus. Before Milo, I never heard about them. Maybe they existed, but they just weren't active. But I think that was a huge reason why Milo was getting attacked, was suddenly he was actually getting people active. Same thing with Crowder. And this is one of the reasons why conservatives lose over and over and over again. Shit comes up, and instead of actually defending their own, they're like, well, we don't want to be controversial and shit, and so we're just going to shut our mouths. And then what happens? Some loudmouth asshole happens to be the one who gets on to Fox News or CNN, instead of someone who's a little more sane, because they don't want to be controversial.
Yeah. It's a fucking nightmare at this point, just because, like, this kind of goes back to what we were saying before, that, like, through Bloodsports, through everything else, all of the, like, YouTube itself is all becoming, like the users on YouTube, if not, like, the platform itself, I mean, are acting just like this media establishment. So it's like, and we're being actively prevented from coming up with an alternative, and everybody's acting like there's only the viewpoint of, if you don't preface everything with "I'm here to save the white race," you're obviously some kind of shill. There's like, we're just getting fucked over here, and it'd
be nice to see some internet blood sports that weren't involving alt-right people.
Yeah. I would like to see, I understand, like, most of the modern, or, like, older established people are just fucked, but I would like to see somebody like John Ralston Saul show up. Like, I would like to see, I don't know, I would like to see, like, Jared Taylor have a debate with somebody like Jordan Peterson or something, even though, like, they probably don't have a reason to. Like, that's the thing with Jordan Peterson, that he appeals to everybody because he's more or less a centrist. Like, he understands what's going on with SJWs. He understands the infiltration of universities, and how there's, like, this hive mind mentality on the left where it's like, you're not allowed to be, it's like, if you're not part of the collective, you must be assimilated or destroyed. Like, because you're obviously a racist, sexist bigot. And, like, he understands that all of that is toxic and everything, and he understands why the alt-right exists, but he doesn't outright say, I don't like what the alt-right is doing. He doesn't outright say any of that, and it's very odd. To me, it's very odd like that, because this is also a guy who, like, he was, like, has famously stated before to people when they've tried to ambush him, like, before he ever got on major media news, like, there was all those videos where it was SJWs trying to ambush him after his lectures. And he just turned the tables on them, where he was explaining, it's like, I've studied the Nazis forever. I know, like, anybody is capable of being a piece of shit and making people carry wet salt around everywhere. And it's like, the fact that he uses all those analogies and everything makes it very obvious that he believes the Holocaust happened. So it's not like he's going to be it's not like, you know, we're going to have Poll popping up out of nowhere at some point being like, see, he's secretly our guy. But as far as, like, the alt-right and the alt-light and everything else goes, and just, like, that in general, it's very odd that he's somebody who, like, has famously stated how much he studied the Nazis and everything, and he doesn't want to challenge this whole idea that we need to change the status quo back to a, like, pseudo-fascistic, nationalistic, like, aristocracy model of government.
I think he's more tried to address and explain why people are behaving this way, rather than going... in some ways, he does agree with, well, we're talking about the left collectively, so we've got to talk about postmodernism. He somewhat agrees somewhat. I mean, I think he very much agrees with the postmodernists in that a huge reason why people believe what they believe is for psychological reasons, not logical reason. So it's pointless to try and explain to people on a policy-by-policy basis why they're wrong. It's better to go after people and ask, well, how did you come to believe these things? What was going on in your life? What is your psychological motivation? And start to work through what set you down this path. And hopefully, once you're maybe not in such a personally screwed up place, you won't have to be there anymore. If somebody is super fucking stressed out and these beliefs give them comfort, they're not going to abandon those beliefs until they're not as stressed. You have to offer them something, well, less stressful at the very least, but certainly more desirable. That's his tactic. And that's, I think, a much better tactic than the internet Bloodsports of let's just beat our heads together without trying to understand.
But this is also a guy that has gone into, like, the Lion's Den and has done... He did a fucking podcast with, like, H3 for fuck's sake. I don't know why he... Like, I don't like the idea of him showing up in Internet Bloodsports because I don't think Andy Worski or Tonka Saw deserve any more money for just being bullshit artists. But
he actually walked away from an interview with, I don't know what Russell Brand, and he isn't a jabbering idiot.
Yeah, well, I understand why that was, because Russell Brand is a jabbering idiot.
I'm pretty sure that Russell Brand is a ancient Cthulhu god.
No, I think Russell Brand straight up. No, he's not a blind idiot god, Garam. He's a fucking moron that was so high on drugs he actually fell in love with Katy Perry. Like, eat shit and die, fam. I don't care. Just...
Is Russell Brand still relevant?
No, he was never relevant. He was never ever relevant. He was a fucking comedian. He was one of those, like, that very American thing where we get a piece of shit that, like, is charismatic, is, like, charismatic in the view of somebody in the establishment that nobody else knows, and then he gets pushed to high hell through movies and shit. I don't know if they have, like, a German equivalent of that, but, like, I don't know, like, how much of British television do you know, Tyler? Or, like, British, like, culture?
BBC Top Gear, that's it.
Well, everybody knows Top Gear. That's why nobody pays their fucking TV license anymore, because they canceled Top Gear. Like, fucking, I don't know, it's like I was gonna say, if you knew a lot about British stuff, then I would say, like, you know, Russell Brand is, like, he's an American equivalent to, like, Ricky Gervais. He's a piece of shit that gets pushed because he knows people in the industry. And, he doesn't have, like, much value beyond that.
Well, he's, frankly, I think more just entertaining because he's a complete nut.
Well, like, he's only entertaining.
The man has no sense of reality.
Yeah. He believes in Chinese democracy.
Hey, that's my favorite GNR album.
It's the best album of all time. It's gonna be the greatest album of all... It only took 12 years to come out, and the Chinese... Everybody joked for a while that album would actually come out when the Chinese had embraced democracy, and it's like, no. We're still here.
Have to be waiting for a lot longer now that Xi Jinping has successfully gotten rid of term limits to the Chinese constitution.
Yeah, which is amazing.
He can just run again and again and again.
Does he even run?
Officially, yes, but anyone who would vote against him has been purged from the party.
It's unbelievable.
So, yeah, and I can't believe that. Well, it's more unbelievable that this isn't being ticked up more and more. So,
well, I mean, it's unbelievably stupid. Like, no, that's true. I can totally believe this. I'm just mad that, like, everybody beyond, like, everybody outside of China Uncensored is just acting like this is not a thing. Like,
yes,
the only foreign news that the U.S. is actually covering now is just shit going on in Russia, because we have this obsession with being like, Russia is the true enemy again. The Cold War is back, and better than ever.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about China, but to make sure we have all our bases covered here. So, after Mao, the Chinese wrote into their constitution that the president can only be in office for 2 4-year terms. Xi Jinping and his cronies have now successfully bullied the party into removing that limit, so we can run again and again and again. And we've been seeing the corruption purges, which are really just political purges, of anyone who would offer any dissent, namely supporters of the former President Toadface. I forget the guy's name. I just remember it as Toadface. He looks like a toad.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what the Chinese called him.
Yeah, it's an apt name. So China's gone from basically a authoritarian state to now an authoritarian dictatorship. Oh, but it gets worse. Not only did they remove the term limits, they've instituted what is colloquially being called Shiism into the official Communist Party doctrine.
Like Shi-Ni, or are we talking...
No, this is
that's
Xi
Japanese, hang
Jinping.
on.
This is like Xi Jinping's personal take on communism.
Yeah.
It is now party doctrine.
I'm sorry, I keep getting my Chinese letters fucked up. Because I forget that like X makes the she sound and Q makes the chin sound.
Yes, I know it's not exactly the best Romanized version of the language, but anyways.
Yeah.
So not only have we gone from... So now we're at a totalitarian dictatorship. Because everyone has to follow the teachings of the guy at the top. So China just went from being, I'm kind of worried about these guys, they seem to be going in an awfully dangerous direction, to they're driving off of the cliff. So where is this going to be a problem? Let's say in the near future, China starts encountering economic problems. Under the current system, it would be easy enough to remove the current, then current leadership and replace them with more competent people. Now you can't do that because it's president for life. So they're just going to keep on going down crazy lane until the country's in ruins. And then what happens when countries are put under an intense amount of economic stresses, especially if they're a totalitarian government? They start invading people.
War.
If the United States is wise...
Oh, you didn't even want to launch into a Ron Perlman quote there, Tyler? Like, you didn't even want to be like, it never changes.
If I was in China, Yeah, sorry. Continue.
Garam, like you and Swade predicted this to a T like 5 episodes ago.
Well, he kept on saying Russia's not the threat, China's the threat.
Yeah, well, like, remember, like, we
had
that whole conversation of...
believe me.
We had that whole conversation about it's China's a paper tiger left out in the acid rain of its own ecological doom. Like...
I think that may have been swayed, but yes, with China, the problem is their time's running out, and they're going to get back into a corner, and they're going to start getting fucking hostile. With Russia, they've been able to survive some pretty hard economic times, and it doesn't look like things are going to get worse for them. So if they manage to go this long without going completely batshit crazy, I can assume that they're going to be able to continue to go even longer without going batshit crazy. The Chinese have become accustomed to wealth. Take that wealth away, I'm not sure how the regime is going to react, because that is the only thing keeping that regime in power right now, the fact that they have wealth. If that currency collapses for any reason, let's say they start having serious issues with food production because they've poisoned the soil, they are in fucking trouble. And they are going to start invading people to get the resources that they need to keep their population sated.
Yeah, that's where we're going to see
very concerned about China.
That's where we're going to see, like, also, like you and Swade have said before, we're going to see the new superpower show up in the form of India. Because, like, who the fuck are they going to invade? Like, what, Korea again? They have nothing. Taiwan again? Oh man, you have 1 island's worth of food production for your entire country. Like, Japan? Oh, pick a fight with the U.S., please. Nepal, not there.
It's
like,
going to be expanding their sphere of influence in the Southeast Asian countries.
Yeah, like...
hey, we've already had wars with...
No, Garam, they're going to invade Mongolia for their food.
To be honest, Russia and China made several deals in terms of water supply, and also China is colonizing Africa batshit crazy. So basically they're making deals like, we are building roads for you, and therefore we lease your agricultural land for 100 years. So basically all the fishing industry in Africa is actually just working for India. That is actually what happened.
Yeah. Well, you mean China?
So that is what they're doing.
You mean China, not India?
Trying to get economics for resources. They can't. It's clear that they've given up relying on international powers, and they're trying to take over themselves. That suggests they're concerned in the future they won't be the folks able to make the best economic deal to be able to secure those resources. So yeah, they want their Silk Road out to Europe, because then they can take over parts of the European market. Now the Europeans can't fuck with them.
Well, as a Canadian who has experienced Chinese colonization, what do you think is worse, a migrant crisis with the Middle Easterners or a migrant crisis with the Chinese?
Oh, migrant crisis with the Middle Eastern folks, because the Chinese folks don't want to kill you because you disagree with them. Yeah. The Chinese folks will leave you alone, and they themselves kind of just want to get left alone. They don't have a particularly large degree of animosity towards you, or as with what I've seen from the Middle Eastern migration, is they really hate European culture, it seems. I always go back to that, I think it was Gallup poll. They found that half of the Muslims in the UK think that gay marriage should be illegal. If you did that poll in, say, Canada and the United States with Asian immigrants, half of them are going to say, I don't give a shit one way or the other. I just want to be left alone.
I guess I can see that. So, as a Canadian, how do you feel about the continual shame your glorious reader brings upon you and your family?
Peoplekin. I sexually identify as a people.
What the fuck, Peoplekin? What happened?
Oh no, Tyler doesn't know about this.
So, okay, I think he was over in Nanaimo, which is in British Columbia, just north of the capital of Victoria. By the way, the capital of British Columbia is not Vancouver. It is Victoria.
Okay.
People apparently don't know that one, and it's fucking hilarious.
I mean, I can understand why, because everybody thinks that Canada is just Vancouver and then lumberjack memes.
Yes. Anyways, so, he was giving this talk, and they had a bunch of, university-age students there, and one of them was basically saying, how as Canadians can we work for the benefit of all humanity? And he interjects this student.
Trudeau,
goes,
is just like...
Around here, we like to use the word people-kind.
People-kind.
It was mankind.
It was like, how can we do these works to benefit all of mankind? And Trudeau stops and is like, I think you mean people-kind.
Yes, he managed to take a question about how can we all get along and divide people. And after that, he goes to India, and he screws up twice. The first screw up was every event he went to, he had a different costume. And he was all trying to dress up in these traditional Indian clothes. Meanwhile, you've got the rest of the Indian delegation. They're just wearing suits and ties.
Yeah.
And they're kind of looking at one another going, I think...
Is this jackass fucking with us?
I'm sure a few of them is isn't this guy really offended by cultural appropriation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's appropriating it, dude, seriously. And then he invites a suspected assassin or something to one of his luncheons.
I bet he actually calls it a luncheon.
Yeah, I mean, it was just the entire Idea trip was a comic disaster, and on the backs of the entire people kind comment, it's no surprise that a recent poll, I think it was from Global, which is a Canadian newscaster, found that if we had an election right now, the Conservatives would win. This is hilarious because the Conservative Party is in complete disarray right now because they're rebuilding after running the country for 10 years under Stephen Harper. A lot of people after the Liberal Party won, they were old men and a few old women, but mostly old men. So they all retired. So the Conservative Party hasn't been doing anything because it's like a Rocky montage as they're training. So they've done nothing, and they could win the next election doing nothing. That's how bad it's gotten over here.
Well, I thought we had already a severe sentence with Merkel, but that guy sounds even more crazy.
Well,
the guy's perpetual.
The thing is with Trudeau is that I think Trudeau is just like the left equivalent of like George Bush, in that he's just a fucking he's just a filthy con man. But
yeah, absolutely. He has got no clue what he's doing, and that's one of the speculations.
Or at least he's pretending he has no clue what he's doing, and is meanwhile stealing all the money. But Merkel is like actively a fucking supervillain at this point.
Yeah, you have to admit she isn't stupid, but she doesn't care about being the Chancellor of Germany. She's more caring about getting more power. That is what she cares about most of the time.
Yeah. So tell us what's going on with the current state of things in ye old Deutschland.
You guys actually have a government now. It's not complete anarchy.
Finally, yes, finally. Fucking amazing. Now, the best thing actually what happened, a party member of the SPD actually was bitching and complaining about that there is a verse in the German national anthem which is saying Vaterland, and that literal translation for fatherland, and that term is too sexist, and we have to rephrase our national anthem into Heimatland, home country. Can you imagine how crazy complete Germany went? Everybody basically was saying, and the SPD is wondering why nobody wants to vote them. Yeah, they know where the real problems are. Bitching and complaining about our national anthem.
Weimar intensifies.
And also,
or I should say Weimar.
Also, he has become the minister for Minister for Innere Sicherheit, or basically Minister for Inner Security. That's the literal translation. And yesterday he made a statement: Islam and Germany doesn't fit together, and he basically got lambasted by it. But basically, what is happening? He positioned himself in such a way that like 80% of the German population is saying at least somebody has a common sense in our current government.
Well, this is right on the heels of Merkel admitting that there are no-go zones in Germany. It seems like after, I know when Merkel said that, everyone was like, gasp! And I'm like, fucking, okay, yeah, I know it's gasp, but she admitted it, but it seems like there's been a very slow growing admission from the European politicians that they do have problems, as it turns out.
Yeah, because that means that we're beyond critical mass, though. That's not a good thing.
Or they're just very slowly realizing that they have to at least acknowledge these problems, because I believe the AfD is now the second largest party in Germany according to popularity.
Yeah.
By popularity, yes.
Yes, they're the third largest in the German parliament.
And also the interesting thing is people are realizing why, not the people, but the politics are now realizing why they're voting AfD, because they see the current treatment of the refugees, and they considered the unfairness towards the actual citizens, that they were treated like shit, and the refugees are more or less treated like better beings.
Yeah.
And they can behave basically how they want, and nothing is happening to them, because they aren't German citizens, so German law doesn't apply. That's always the logic behind it, which is fucking stupid.
So just to put things in context, in 2013, AFD got only 5% of the vote, and now they're the second largest party by popularity in 5 years. Yes, less than 5, and now they're second largest in 5 years. By political standards, that's a meteoric rise. It's basically one election cycle to go from basically non-existent. It'd be like if the Green or Libertarian Party in the United States was running as like the primary candidate against Donald Trump.
Yeah, that'd be nuts. But also, I don't know. I don't want to live in that timeline, to be honest with you, because the Libertarian Party fucking backed Gary Johnson, which means that they're not actually
Can you
libertarians.
imagine a debate between Gary Johnson and Donald Trump?
I have the best speech. Blah, 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 weed. That would be how it goes. It would be Donald Trump doing a meme of himself, and then Gary Johnson tripping on his own tongue, and then talking about marijuana, and then proceeding to fucking bitch about the budget, and then quietly avoiding the fact that he has ties to the private prison industry. That's what everybody forgets about Gary Johnson. He is both pro-marijuana, he's famously pro-marijuana, but also got his governorship because he was backed by lobbyists from the private prison industry in Arizona. There's never been more of a clear-cut case of controlled opposition in history.
So what's next for Germany?
From Gary Johnson, at least out of Germany, he's a little bit of a retard.
Oh, he's a total retard.
And why people are even considering him is disgusting.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was because it was him or Donald Trump or Jill Stein or Hillary Clinton. People in 2008 and in 2012 were famously bitching about how bad of a candidate Obama was and McCain was, or Obama and Mitt were. But it's like what we had for the 2016 election was holy shit.
So what's coming up in Germany politically now that you guys actually have a government? I imagine you guys have to next get a budget going.
The budget isn't a problem.
Germany doesn't have budget problems. They offset all their costs onto the slave races of Europe. I mean neighboring countries.
We had last year a plus of 13 billion euros. So the interesting thing...
as Greek continues to burn... I mean Greece, not Greek.
Hey, they're starting to get better, actually. But the interesting thing is, it could have been 50 billion.
If only it weren't for those goddamn Finns taking their fair wages. How dare they?
No, imagine how much the refugees actually cost a year, Germany. 20 billion. And that is what the taxpayer has to pay, instead of, for example, paying that money back into the pension funds, because the government, during the reunification, took all the money out of the state pension fund. There's nothing left.
Yeah, because
so let's pay the fucking refugees.
Because Germany, like we discussed before, as you said, Germany is basically a colony of the U.S. and operates in a very similar system. So they have the classic, let's let all of our old people borrow from the retirement fund that they're never going to give to their kids for the sake of other shit. It's like the U.S. does with the Social Security.
Yeah, but it's kind of disgusting.
Yeah, and then apparently Italy's doing the fucking same thing.
Also, what is interesting actually, Berlin wants to create specific police units which are equipped with military equipment to get those Arab clans out of Berlin, because they have right now they have become so powerful that at some points the police cannot enter Berlin anymore, and
that scares me because I think that might be a lie.
No,
I don't. Do you guys know
no,
who Angry
definitely
Foreigner is?
No, the Swedish Prime Minister was, if you remember the big press conference with the Swedish Prime Minister, Trump and Merkel, the Swedish Prime Minister admitted, that they did have, he didn't call them no-go zones, I think he called them exposed areas, but colloquially
some cuckish way of saying this shit's fucked, yo.
Yeah, basically he's saying they're not technically no-go zones because law enforcement can still go there, but they're not that far away.
It's not technically a monopoly if there's only 2 major companies in the country.
Yeah.
One of those guys.
But I know Sweden's been talking about it. He openly admitted they're dumping way more resources into policing these areas. And there's been a lot of talk about them calling up National Guard units and training. They were dropping leaflets about telling its citizens how to prepare in case of a war. So the speculation is...
Yeah, but do you guys know who Angry Foreigner is?
Sorry, what?
Angry Foreigner, the YouTuber. He's a Swedish YouTuber who he does... Well, he did a video recently where he got a shitload of flack because he basically called out Peter Sweden for reporting on this stuff. And he said, he went over some of the same news reports and was like, guys, this is fucking aggressive fear-mongering. Because it was like Peter Sweden was saying, there's Muslim gangs in parts of Sweden now that have assault rifles that have more assault rifles than the police have access to. This is getting out of control. I'm really scared now, guys. And
I highly doubt that, considering Sweden is a major arms manufacturer.
Well, that's the thing is that Angry Foreigner was like, this is bullshit, guys. I'm gonna and went over the same news reports that Peter Sweden was referencing. Was like, they found one machine gun. They found a single AK in the entire during this raid,
we know about there's been, I think, a few automatic weapons seized, but that's not uncommon for normal gang activity.
Yeah, that's that's what I'm saying, is that I'm worried about this because I don't think that this is going to be the great purge that everybody's waiting for or something. I don't think this is the country is going to finally rise up and stop this shit. It's I think that this is the politicians at it again, using it as an excuse to militarize their police so that they can suppress riots of their own people while they continue to import even more refugees to do shit. I don't think they're actually going to fix the problem. I think they're using the problem as an excuse to get away with, doing the shit. Because, militarization of the police never ends well. Ever.
Yeah, cough, cough, Ferguson, cough, cough.
Cough, cough, Ferguson, cough, cough, the entirety of the SS.
The SS wasn't a police, it was the private army of Hitler.
But they were basically started off as a militarized police force. I know before the SS there was the brown shirts, but that was another. While we have you here, Tyler, I'm going to make this point.
Shirts not to get confused with the brown coats from Firefly.
Shut up about that shit. Brown shirts it was the old thing for the fascists back then, but while we have Tyler here, we have to bring up World War II again. But Tyler, I have to make this point. The Waffen SS was fucking dumb. And they were never that good at combat, as much as everybody wanted to pretend that their records were impeccable. It's no, they fucking sucked because they were a weaponized police force that was a bunch of fanatical Hitler worshippers.
Yeah, I think that's why they were scary as shit.
They were brutal as fuck. They were proper sadists, but being as efficient as
the Heer was better than them in every regard. There was random units in the Heer that did more fucking fractions of the Heer did everything they did better during parts of the war.
Not the Heer, Wehrmacht.
Well, the Heer was the land army of the Wehrmacht. The Wehrmacht was just the whole armed force, wasn't it? Am I getting my German mixed up?
Yeah, Heer is the army.
Yeah, because it was the Wehrmacht had the 3 branches of the Luftwaffe, the Heer, and the Kriegsmarine.
Because we call right now our army Bundesheer, so that's the reason why I'm a little bit concerned. Usually we don't try to interfere with former Nazi terms.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. But I'm just saying I was just trying to be specific when I said the Heer, because
Yeah,
a lot of people
I
use the
know.
Heer and the Wehrmacht interchangeably when they don't understand, like, how Hitler handled the Wehrmacht was he threw all of, like, the mainline, like, the Heer was almost entirely conservative and centrist as far as German politics went. The Luftwaffe and the SS were all of the people that were pro-Nazi party, and then the Kriegsmarine was almost entirely comprised of, like, political dissidents that he considered communists. Because, like, all of the left-leaning Germans that were left in the country were put into the Kriegsmarine because the Nazis wanted to give them the shit job of running the U-boats.
Which had the highest mortality rate of any branch.
Because submarine warfare sucks!
Same thing in the U.S. Highest mortality rate.
Yeah.
But anyways,
the interesting thing is, if you have been caught by the Germans back in the days, you should have prayed for getting caught by the Wehrmacht, not by the SS. The SS would have killed you. The Wehrmacht was actually a very honorable branch.
Yeah, although, like, people tried to flip and flop it when it came to the Soviets. Because I know that there's been a bunch of people that have argued that the SS were more fair in their prosecution of prisoners and everything than the Heer was during the invasion of Stalingrad and shit like that. Or the siege of Stalingrad, I should say, the invasion of Russia. But, like, the thing was is that there's a lot of stuff that's misattributed to the Waffen-SS that's given a lot of people the idea throughout history that the Waffen-SS and the SS in general was like some elite corps of handpicked fighters, and it was like, no, they're just literally fanatical Hitlerists that were up-gumped policemen.
Fanaticism plus the best arms and armor, yeah, that's going to be a pretty scary fighting force.
Yeah,
professionalism, yeah, I can see there being a problem. If we are talking about batshit crazy fanatics, a problem with discipline and organization.
Yeah, well, I mean, a funny comparison is that and just the Japanese Imperial Army in general, because they had all that fanaticism and they were still disciplined and professional.
Different culture, but hey, just be happy that it wasn't your troops going up against the Hitlerjugend. That was the poor Canadians had to deal with that shit.
Ran a bunch of teenagers in the woods with 15 Panzerfaust between them.
Yeah, we're going to send a bunch of teenagers, and we're not going to, well, let's just say the Canadian forces, first off, they were actually quite the resistance, but, hey, yeah, child soldiers, that's not going to be super fucked up to fight against.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, that's the hilarious thing about Canada, is like, it's like, there's all these memes about how you're cucks and all the stupid shit about, like, Canadian foreign policy and how they've prosecuted everything, but it's like, you know, like, there's got to be some serious divide in your country where, like, the majority of your political infrastructure and, like, the average Canadian is like this, and then you see how their military history, where it's like, no, in every war every single war they've been involved in since even before they became their own country, they've been pretty much like stellar soldiers. It's like, this would happen.
I told you that Canada is one of the few countries in the world that has never lost a war.
Yeah. It's almost like all of the fucking intelligent Canadians join the army because they hate everyone else around them.
Or we're just incredibly careful about which wars we get involved in.
Yeah.
But speaking of World War II, Italy is taking cues from the Germans again.
God damn it. Even though that was the other way around. That's wrong, though. It was the other way around. Hitler took the fascist system from... First. He took the fascist system from Mussolini, who cribbed it from Franco because he took phalangists and was like, nah, we're the fascistes. Whatever. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm Victor Von Drunk. Leave me alone.
Yeah, so Italy shocked everyone. Apparently it was like another case of the Trump election, where all the newspapers and news outlets were saying that certain parties were going to win in the Italian election, and then the people who actually won the election were the right-wingers. They were the Eurosceptics. So it sounds like the same thing is a lot of people didn't... Either the polls were being skewed or people were just too embarrassed to say who they were going to vote for. But the Eurosceptics won big in Italy, that is dealing with a lot of debt and a lot of refugees. The political situation has gotten so bad The second biggest party in their parliament, I kid you not, was started by a comedian and blogger. A fucking comedian started a political party, and now they're the second biggest party in Italy. Fucking think about that. It just sounds like the political establishment is just falling apart in Italy. Their country is... the political establishment has failed, period. Their public debt is 130% of their GDP. Greece is at 181. So they're being overrun by refugees, and Germany basically keeps on inviting the people in. NGOs keep on bringing boats into Italian ports, just chock full of these illegal refugees, who, by the way, don't register with the Italian authorities as refugees. They just make their way through the entire fucking country, and you can well imagine if you show up with, like, not a whole lot of money, you're probably going to be stealing stuff, trying to get the money necessary to travel through Greece into the more wealthy northern European countries. So the Italians have been incredibly pissed off, just like the Greeks with the refugee crisis.
Yeah.
I can't say I'm surprised, other than just how fast the media swept this under the rug. I think it was like news for like 6 hours, and then everyone turned around and ignored it. Zoom, you were saying something about your concerns about Italy.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, I'm glad that they're like kind of pulling their shit together, but on the other, it's going to be kind of weird because the whole thing with Italy is just like you said. They have always had like a million different fucking political parties, and they never want to deal with anything. Like even way back when, like the only times that Italy has been unified since the fall of Rome has been basically under Mussolini. Like before that, it was just always city-states and the Lombard League and shit like that, and it's just the.
Yeah, Italy historically has been defined. We had this chat with listeners like last week, but yeah, Italy has historically been defined as a patchwork of political parties.
Yeah. It's gonna be a fucking clusterfuck if there ever was one.
Oh God!
Italy is still a patchwork because the North wants to become independent from the South.
Because why?
All the economical power of Italy is in the North, and the South of Italy is literally a third world country. All the big companies, like. I
mean, that's the entire reason why. That's the entire reason why we had the Sicilian opera. I'm retarded. The Sicilian mafia in the U.S. for so long is like the U.S.'s relations with crime syndicates has always like since because like we basically created organized crime through the Prohibition, and then after that, when we had all the immigration waves coming to the country, the relationship with like international crime syndicates outside of the triads and the tongs was pretty much entirely based on which countries had such poor enough conditions that their sons and daughters came to the U.S. trying to find their fortune, and then like ended up falling into organized crime here in a group of their own. The Sicilian mafia, the Irish mafia, like all of those existed entirely because like they came from countries that were so poor, and then they immigrated here, and then the only way they could really make money was by doing crime, and and they kind of formed like, you know, the ethno-criminal groups that we see now. And it's like the all throughout like the 40s or like all throughout like the end of the 40s until like the RICO statutes and everything that killed the mob eventually after so many generations, and then the RICO statutes came in and had that happen to them. Like they existed entirely because like they had all like there it was all of these like all we have is each other, because everything south of like, you know, the mountainous parts of Italy had like nothing. It's like, what is our chief export? Pasta.
Wine.
And fat titties.
Olive oil.
Olive oil.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that used to be enough. Like, Rome could have ruled the world economically just for its production of olive oil, especially after they started colonizing Spain. But no, like the world's moved on from that. We don't need olive oil as much anymore. At least so everybody thinks. I still think we need olive oil plenty, but that's neither here nor there.
I was talking to Italian on Discord, and they were mentioning there's been some rumblings about a Italian exit from the EU, and he was shooting that down, saying because of the nature of their debt with the EU, they basically can't. Even though the government's controlled by Eurosceptics, the debt has basically enslaved them. They can't leave the EU. So their plan right now is, sounds like, first and foremost, start dealing with the refugees, getting the police forces organized, start maybe cracking down on the NGO boats. Because technically what the NGO boats are doing is illegal. They should be they should be returning the people they pick up in international waters to the closest port. Instead, they're sailing halfway across the Mediterranean to dump them in Italy. They should be returning them to usually North Africa. Which port?
Morocco, Egypt.
There was one port in particularly which they should be dropping them off because that's overwhelmingly.
Tunis.
Yeah, I think
Tunisia?
it was. Yeah.
Tunis. Most likely
Tunis is geographically the closest, I believe. It was. Yeah, it is Tunis. It's Tunis or Tripoli is one of the two locations. So Tripoli is further away from Italy. However, Libya is a very destabilized state. Tunisia has its problems, but it's not nearly as destabilized. So trying to get human smuggling operations going out of Tunisia is apparently harder than Libya. So usually Tripoli's the closest port. But there's also a lot of, apparently, Tunis would be the other port they should be dropping people. Like, it's closer to Tripoli, where they're picking these people up, than it is to even Malta. So yeah, what they're doing is illegal, yet everyone just kind of turns a blind eye. So all they really need to do is, say you've got a NGO boat sailing into Catania, which is in Sicily, which they're dropping them off, is sail a military vessel or a Coast Guard vessel into the port and have the civilian police meet them in the port and basically go, who the hell are these people? And start asking questions. Very quickly, you're going to be able to say, well, you broke a law by your own admission. We're not only going to arrest you, the operator of this boat, but we're going to now detain everyone on this vessel and go about probably an evaluation process. Maybe some of them can prove they're legitimate refugees, but a lot of them probably going to be unable to produce even a scrap of evidence. So, well, can't stay here. So I guess you're going to be given a one-way ticket back to, well, wherever you say you're from. Don't do it again. Basically what the Australians were doing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's... everyone's going to be saying, oh, deportation is so horrible, but
I think
they're giving them at least humane transportation back to wherever they say they came from. So, what's the problem?
I think it would be enough accidentally to sink such a ship, and it would instantly stop. Or figure out who's actually paying the $10,000 to get them into Europe.
Yeah, that would be a better question. Where are they getting the money from? Oh yeah, now that you've detained those people, you get to have a nice full police investigation as to, well, who's operating this boat. Maybe they're an accomplice to this illegal act. Oh yeah, you could have a fun investigation.
I mean, have you been seeing what's going on in the UK? Like, fucking police don't investigate shit like that anymore. They're all politicized now across most of Europe. In the UK, it's basically 100% now.
Yeah, that's the other thing that's been going on. The police care more about, like, Lauren Southern and Pettibone. Oh, they're gonna say mean things. Meanwhile, we have
Brittany Pettibone
little...
getting detained was hilarious because that woman's such a cunt, but at the same time, like, I disagree with the reasons why she got detained.
It's like, oh my... I'm sitting there going, oh my god, they're gonna say things that people don't like. Meanwhile, we're just gonna sweep under, in the age of #MeToo, 1,000 little girls get raped and nobody talks about it on the news.
But yeah, when a politician, a reporter comes in with a different opinion or a wrong-leaning opinion, yeah, that's offensive. Get the fuck out of the country. Yeah, that's how we have to deal with shit.
So to give the rundown of this one, so there's, let's start with Lauren Southern. So the British Home Office kicked her out of the country, saying that letting her presence in the UK was, quote, not conductive to the public good. So that's amazing. You basically have the government saying what's good for you. Like, that doesn't sound like something straight out of 1984. And so she was carrying these signs, and on the sign was printed, Allah is gay, Allah is trans, Allah is a lesbian, Allah is intersex, Allah is a feminist, Allah is queer, Allah is all of us.
Here we go again with the it's okay to be white, like, subtle poster campaign. Yeah, and Brittany Pettibone was also got hung up on that, like we said before, but I still think it's funny because, like I said, I think she's a cunt, even if she didn't really deserve that. And then
she didn't even have signs. She was just going to, like,
she was trying to meet somebody who also is, like, on the UK's blacklist. I'm trying to remember what his name is.
It's not Richard Spencer. Tommy Robinson.
Yeah, Tony Robinson.
And
Tony Robinson or Tommy Robinson? Am I getting that wrong?
I have the exact quote here. Tension amongst local communities and possibly incite hatred. It's not that will incite hatred, it's maybe. It just, like, that's a pretty low bar to set. Like, you might be a problem, we don't really know, but we're just not even going to let you in to talk to this asshole, so... I mean, I'm pretty sure at this point, if Tommy Robinson ever left the country, they wouldn't let him back in.
It sounds more like even the possibility of wrong thing is a crime.
Well, it's clear, as Zoom was saying, that the police forces down there have been completely politicized because this is against the backdrop of yet another Rotherham-level sex scandal in which little girls were abused. So this time it looks... this time it's about 1,000 over in Telford. And these Muslim grooming gangs were prostituting these girls, and I think the estimate's about 1,000 girls at this point. Same deal as Rotherham. The police knew exactly what was going on, and they did nothing. They just sat there on their hands because they were too scared. This is what came out of Rotherham, of why the Rotherham police never responded to the allegations. They were scared that if they arrested these people, they would be accused of being racists.
Yeah. So when we first posted that article in the Love Discord, I remember Swade said something to the effect of, like, talking about, like, the chain of fear where they're afraid of that because their superiors are afraid, because their superiors are afraid, all the way up to people that are actually pulling the strings being like, no, that's racist, because they're so detached from what's going on the ground that they, like, think that it's a false report or something.
And what's shocking me about this is this hasn't gotten any traction. And this just goes to show the complete insanity of what's going on. With the #MeToo movement going around, everyone's screaming about rape culture. Well, here's an example of an actual rape culture. And where are these social activists to protest this literal rape culture in which thousands of little girls were raped?
Yeah.
Not one to be found. Absolutely not fucking one.
Yeah. Fucking Telford. Ugh.
Yeah, it's gonna be, they're already calling for another inquiry, and they'll probably do it, but it's going to be another disgusting case, I think, of just police. What happens? What do you do when you have a police force that's too scared to enforce the law?
No, they're still enforcing the law. That's the problem. Is that we've reached that point of cowardly policing where it's like they want to do broken windows policing, and they want to arrest people for weed. They want to fuck around with people for TV licenses. But then as soon as somebody commits an actual crime, it's oi lad, I don't have a gun. I can't handle this. We need to get somebody else. And it's just it's fucking it's like Hot Fuzz was a biopic or something. Like, it's fucking trash.
When they go to arrest these people, that somebody might throw stones at them, or there might be some reporter.
Yeah, it's like I don't
questions about racial profiling, but you've already. I mean, if somebody basically says, "I was raped," that man over there did it, and you arrest the guy, I mean, there's no racial profiling. Somebody said they were raped by that guy over there, so I arrested that guy over there. What do you mean?
Yeah,
they won't. They're so scared they won't even risk the chance that they might be asked the question.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know what's worse at this point of like the coward, the overly corporatized coward police force of gormless bureaucrats, or like an over militarized totally political animal police force, like in a different sense as a political animal, like Russia has right now, where like fucking Russia is, as you've said before, Garam, they're the bear in the room that nobody wants to talk about, but like they're having presidential elections on Sunday, or like on what is it? They're having presidential elections on the 18th coming up, and fucking everybody, like the only people who are in the opposition party, one of them had to like bow out because of medical problems induced by being part of like a chemical attack, and the other guy was shot. Like, have you heard about any of this?
No, I haven't heard about the guy who got shot.
Yeah, Tyler, you follow Russian politics.
Yeah, but I haven't heard that somebody has been killed by somebody, to be honest. What I've heard, basically, even the opposition, which is kind of funny, they have been asked who's going to win, and their answer was Putin, of course. So why are you trying to become president? There's a possibility, if I come in power, I will change a lot and that stuff. So everybody actually knows that Putin is going to win. Basically, those elections have been gifted to him thanks to the Brits, with the accused nerve agent attack on the former double agent. Basically, the Russians simply asked, you can send a probe of that stuff to us and we can analyze it too. You can open up a proper investigation and you could that too. And we would look also into it. The statement from the British defense minister, Russia should go away and shut up, that basically gifted him the presidency, that statement. So when the people are wondering why Putin is going to win with at least 80%, ask the nations who are always trying to lambast Russia at any occasion possible.
Yeah.
So Putin at that point doesn't need to kill anybody. Why? Because the nations, explicitly the nations who are part of NATO, they are making everything that Putin gets re-elected, because it is a Russian thing that they want a strong leader. It doesn't necessarily mean he has to be a nice leader, but Putin makes one thing clear: he's going to protect Russia, and that's what the Russians care about.
Quite the juxtaposition about what we were just talking about.
There's still a whole bunch
going on in the UK.
Yeah, we're like the
he's
UK.
The tough guy. I'm going to get you safe from these crazy Europeans whose countries seem to be falling apart before their very eyes. Do you want to live in a society in which little girls are raped? Well, I guess you have to vote for me.
Yeah.
Although that's not a very hard argument to make.
It's still weird because there's still opposition parties popping up in Russia, and like every time they have somebody like just random members of the party, not even like the people in charge, are getting like tased and stabbed by fucking security operatives and shit, local police and whatnot.
You have to understand the so-called opposition parties who is funding them. Before, for example, Russia declared all NGOs as legal in Russia, all of them were founded to some degree by the Open Society Foundation. So Russia does also have his hate crush against, for example, George Soros, but George Soros doesn't like that. So every opposition party, just look into the fundings of the opposition parties in Russia, and when there's some Western influence on a Russian political party, Putin doesn't need to do anything. It's more like everybody who's coming from abroad because of the Yeltsin years, every party who is intervened with some political influence outside from Russia is considered as a threat, and they will treat you like a threat.
I guess they're really pushing the whole. So they really are pushing the whole like kill a traitor before an enemy doctrine.
They don't push it. It is simply to make it clear how much Russia actually hates influence from the outside. Look what happened at World War II. You know, everybody's bitching, complaining about the Jews, like neither 6 or 7 million Jews have been killed. How long did it take Germany to kill them? Over 10 years. How little time took it actually Germany to kill 26 million Russians? 3 fucking years. And the main reason why Russia lost so much people, because roughly half of them were actually civilians.
Yeah, well, I mean, also Stalin's policy was even though that's a misattributed quote, somebody in his administration did say quantity has a quality all its own, and literally just fed people into the meat grinder.
Yeah, but half of them were civilians, not contributing a war in itself of fighting the Wehrmacht. It was more like they didn't want it to be invaded, and every citizen who considered or who wanted to make his tribute of getting the Germans out, they started to kill the Germans. Just when the possibility was there, they killed them. And at some point, the Wehrmacht didn't know, are you a friend or a foe? And at that point, they started actually cleaning complete villages empty of civilians. That is how much Russia doesn't like political influence from the outside. And that feeling got even stronger with the Yeltsin years, because they've seen what the West could, the destructive force of the West during the Yeltsin years. They tried to sell off Russia completely. The guy who stopped it was Putin, and that's the thing Putin still has as his biggest benefit in the Russian population. They don't like him. To be honest, they completely understand he isn't a saint, and they don't cheer for him in terms of like it happened during the Obama times, he's going to be the savior. They know he's also a fucking bastard. But at least he's making sure that Russia stays independent at any occasion. And what the West is doing, they're helping him. Because Russia doesn't believe that shit. They are more awake in terms of what is happening on the political agenda in general. It is how it is.
The Russians seem to be playing this far better than the Europeans. The Europeans are trying to manufacture an enemy in the Russians that doesn't necessarily have to exist. Russians are sitting there going, well, actually, this is a better juxtaposition against you guys for us, because, as I said, I mean, look at this entire telephone story. It's a very easy argument to make. That, look at the Europeans, do you really want to be like them? Well, by the way, they hate you. And
also, for example, with the Dark Age case in Britain, where they accused that it has been produced 20 years ago in the Soviet Union. You know, that is what Theresa May said. Said 20 years ago in the Soviet Union. We have 2018. 20 years ago was 1998. There wasn't any Soviet Union anymore.
Oh yeah, I remember that fucking slip up.
Yeah, and at that point, everybody knew that story was full of shit. In addition to that, who invented that nerve agent? He's living already for 20 years in the United States.
Yeah.
So,
like that, in that there's that famous picture where he was pretending to be a Russian. He was pretending to be a tourist taking a picture of fucking Reagan.
mm,
Like,
so you don't need to do anything anymore to re-elect Putin. The West is doing tremendously good job in making Putin the president again, because the thing which Russia doesn't want as a nation, they don't want to be a slave anymore to anybody. That's how shall I say it? The psychological trauma of being the slaves to the Khazars, it's still is stuck in the Russian soul, and everything which looks intimidating.
Everybody forgets that the reason why we had black slavery was because the last white slave market was closed by the Russians when they took the Ukraine, and we're like, no, this shit ends here. Even though they still for the next like few hundred years kept fucking serfdom.
Yeah, but that is what it is. Every time there's even the slightest threat of Russia becoming a slave or a vassal or something similar to somebody else, Russia becomes completely crazy in terms of trying to protect its sovereignty. That is what Russia wants, also as a nation. Leave us fucking alone. We just want to make deals, and if you dare to fuck with us, be aware you will get a fight from us. Always, no exception from the rule. The West doesn't understand this.
I don't know. I feel bad because it seems like when you put it that way, it really does seem like Russia has a lot in common with at least like what's supposed to be the spirit of the U.S. You'd think we would be like great friends, but instead we're still trying to force the Cold War.
I don't think the more I talk with Americans, especially on Discord, the more that sense comes up. You know, it is fucking stupid to have a fight with them. We should have an alliance with them. The ones who are still pushing that Cold War argument, those most likely they're politicians in general. Why? Because
they need another war to feed themselves.
Yes, it would be the most logical thing about to work with Russia in general. They're such a good partner in general. That on business levels, Germans do love make business with Russians. They always pay up front all the fucking time. We are buying for how much? How long? We are 60 years already. Not close to 60 years. No, 50 years. We are buying already 50 years gas from the Soviet Union. Nowadays, the Russian Federation, and then never stop delivering. Not even during the Yeltsin years. They have never stopped doing it. They're such a trustworthy partner in any cases. Why do you want to piss them off? In particular, when you know they don't have that living standard like we have in the West, but do you know what they have? A fucking badass military. And that is something you can rely on. They're going to kick your fucking ass.
Yeah, well, as long as it's their military themselves and not like the random mercenary companies they feed into the paper shredder every fucking day.
The Russians only have 2 mercenary companies, and it is basically everybody who gets fired from the army basically fired from the army because of misbehavior. They're entering those mercenary armies. But the proper soldiers, they're highly trained. They aren't any idiots. They do what they're doing, and they wouldn't, for example, trying to start a war like it happened in the Balkans when one American general actually said we have to attack the Russians because they flew in their airborne troops into the capital of Serbia, and the British guy said, you are ordering me to start World War III. I will not attack the Russians. They are there, we have to deal with them. That's the only thing. Don't fucking piss them off. Let them do their stuff.
Well, I'm not entirely sure the Russians are really wrong in what they're trying to do.
Yeah, well, that seems to be the case. Is like, you know, every time there's this setup that like Russia is being a fag again, it's always like, no. I mean, like just now I said that guy who got tased and stabbed was one of the example. Like, there's a whole bunch of different people that have been by random different politburos and law enforcement agencies have been attacked and killed or attempted murder on. in various areas, but all of the reporters that are actually explaining this whole thing are from NPR or some other Western media organization that have ties to George Soros. And
yep. Like I said, when there's just the slightest hint of they're working for a group outside of Russia, you are basically an enemy of the state, not just by the government, but by the complete society of Russia. The government doesn't need to tell them they're evil or bad. It is how they perceive them as evil or bad, or both at the same time. The society is that way. They're going to fight for their independence, no matter what it takes.
Yeah.
I mean, you know that story. It appeared like 2 years ago on the internet, where some refugees were deported from Norway to Russia, and they tried to. It was shortly after Cologne happened.
Yeah.
They entered a club and were groping women in general, and simply the Russian man basically said that isn't Cologne and fucking slapped the living shit out of them.
Russians,
the
real white knights.
Russians,
true white knights.
Yeah, but the police arrived. They explained what happened. The police entered the car again and said nothing happened. They transported those guys into the hospital. And everything was fine. That is how Russian society works.
There was a story I remember.
Bar fight? What do you mean, what bar fights?
So the Russians, just to continue things, so they used to have laws saying that the police would have to, you could report a domestic incident. So if your neighbors are having an argument, the police would have to come and tell them to shut the fuck up. Apparently they dropped that law. So so long as the couple aren't throwing things at one another, the police can't do jack all. They just have to sit there and listen to it.
Yeah.
Let's just say the Russians believe in letting people sort out their own goddamn problems.
Yeah, kind of.
Yep.
I mean, though I don't know if that's a product of their society being that much better, so much as it's because there's so many people there that don't give a shit.
It's more like Russians in general have a very long temper, so you can tease them, but when they explode tremendously. And at that point, when that happens, you should stay out of that problem. And I think when two parties or two individuals in Russia are basically having an argument and the police is arriving, there could be the possibility that they gang up against the police, beating the shit out of them, and then they start beating each other. So It's more like, don't interfere, just let them have their dispute, and when everything is over, when somebody has to go into the hospital, call the ambulance, or they will go to the next bar and have a drink. That is what is going to happen usually.
So far, my relationship with professional dealing with Russians has been, they say what they're going to do, they do it. I don't get where people get this entire you have to fuck with the Russians things. I'm like, why? You were saying about you Germans love doing business with Russians because the Russians they pay on time, and they don't...
No, they don't pay on time, they pay up front. You make the deal, 2 days later the money is on your bank account, despite the fact you're going to deliver the product 2 years later. Yes, that is how they pay. That is what Russians do. It is fucking amazing.
No, yeah, I heard about that. I know, I used to read, there used to be a bunch of different stories, not only articles, but green text and stuff that I used to read about how, there were people in heavy industry that almost worked exclusively with Russians when they had, the choice was buying steel and buying, industry stock from Russians over the Chinese. And it's but the Chinese is so much cheaper. And they're like, no, work with the Russians. The Russians work with the Chinese, and they hate the Chinese. It's all these
just
stories.
Look at the Chinese. Well, take one look at what the Chinese are doing. Do you really want to work with them? They'll screw you over if you get the chance.
Well, it was it was all these stories about these Russian businessmen being look, man, I'm not trying to screw you. I'm just saying, please don't work with the Chinese. you'll regret it. And they're like, we'll work with the Chinese. It's like American and Canadian companies working with the Chinese over the Russians because of cutting costs and being like, we instantly regret this decision.
Yeah.
So there was all these stories about when the West used to loan African countries money, and we would have all these development contracts. We'd, of course, try and screw over the African countries because ultimately it was a contractor producing the actual airport or roads, and they wanted to profit, and they wanted to maximize the profit. And I remember when the Chinese started dealing in Africa, everyone's like, "Oh, they're cutting all these great deals. I mean, there's so much better than the West because they aren't screwing with these African countries." It's like 5 years later, it's like, holy shit, don't deal with the Chinese. Like, a lot of African countries are like, oh, crap, we thought this was better. We didn't read the fine print.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I know a lot of companies around here for resources. They do a lot of business with the Russians. I've never heard a complaint.
Yeah.
You would get what, because also the thing is, Russians in general are very superstitious, and they are aware of the bad press they're getting in the Western Hemisphere, and they want to make business, so they're trying to be the best customer or client you have in general. So the prejudice you usually get because of the bad rep they get in the Western media, that it doesn't get strong in general. That is also a thing. They try always to show we are trustworthy people, and please treat us the same way we treat you. It is again the duality you have in Russia in general. They are partly Asian, they are partly European in terms of how the mindset is built up. So when a Russian treats you good, that is basically the Asian. That's the Asian mindset coming through of saying, when I treat you good, I want to be treated the same way. That is basically what they're saying with that, indirectly.
Yeah. I haven't run into too many Russians on Discord. It's kind of upsetting. But I know that they occupy their own spheres.
They try to avoid usually the Americans, because most Americans on the internet is more like, America, fuck yeah.
I mean, why would I not be patriotic? You fucking crap bastard.
It's not being patriotic. It's more like.
You don't mean America fuck yeah. You mean America fuck you, right? You mean that kind of mindset?
It is so over the top that everything what America is doing is better than everybody else. That is something. We Europeans get that, and we are trying to deal with it. We accept that that's how Americans are. They're like the nations. Their nation. They're very patriotic. They don't care about if there's some shitty parts of the nation. In general, they love the nation because they see it as a good place. Russians are more like they're more distinct in making their opinion. They're going to say, this is good, this is good, this is good. But those parts are very bad, and blah blah blah, and that is what they're doing. That is what they actually try to discuss in general, not basically stating we are the very best. Of course, they are existing that such guys also exist in the Russian hemisphere, but they are considered as retards, and nobody does like to interact with them. Like if you're talking with people from the Balkans, they always try saying the Balkans are the best. And, not really.
Oh yeah, I have a good buddy that's from Bulgaria, and he's like, he gives me I have a friend in Bulgaria and a friend in Hungary, and they both give me like their own different versions of like, this is what it is like to be Slav, and it's like their Slav shit is like when the two of them are in the same room, they get along, but it's like if they're talking about each other, they're like, fuck that country and fuck that guy, I hate him.
Yeah.
He's a piece of shit.
Exactly. Yeah.
Except they both agree that they hate Croatians. So it's like...
Everybody hates Croatians and Bosnians. Croatians and Bosnians.
Okay, I get the
Chechens.
The Croats?
Huh?
What the Croatians do?
Shut up. Feed me more Chechens.
No, the Bosnians and Croatians have the thing. Can you imagine somebody with a very, 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 very high esteem? Now put that person by the power of 1,000, and then you get a Bosnian and Croatian.
What? So it's like, have you heard of the High Elves? Like those kinds of faggots?
Yeah. That is the thing, but there are no Bosnians and Croatians in general aren't known for being trustworthy partners. Let's say it that way. Just look in the history of those two ethnicities.
What? So it's like the tall poppy syndrome of Scandinavia, but even worse. Like they refuse to admit that you're wrong because they see you as a lower life form or something. They refuse to admit they're wrong, or rather.
Yeah. You will have a lot of shit with them.
The same. We need to wrap this up, so we should close on this. But as a German, what do you think of the Danes? Because I know a Dane that like had to have like 10 people gang up on him to get him to admit that he was wrong about something, and even then he was still trying to argue his way out of it. Like he was just that arrogant about it.
Let me call it the Danes. We like to call the Danes the Canadians of Europe because nobody gives a flying fuck about them.
Hey.
Fucking shit on Danes and Garum at the same time, fucking Tyler style. Excellent.
Come on. Nobody cares about Canada and on the American continent.
No, we're just Americans.
You're just Americans to us.
But the Danes, they tend to be very arrogant and very proud of themselves for some reason.
Vikings.
Most likely.
Bluetooth. They're really proud of Bluetooth.
Yeah, but we
and
actually
Legos.
Don't give a flying fuck about them. It's more like the Danes like to brag how awesome they are, but the reality is they're so dependent on everybody else in Europe in terms of economical terms. You don't need to take them serious. They're just talking out of the
I mean, I'm pretty sure that's the same thing for most of Scandinavia, because I know, like, Germany, Sweden... Well, Germany's not part of Scandinavia, but, like, I know Germany, Sweden, and Norway almost entirely depend upon Finland for the labor for most of their industrial work. And then Germany does a lot of engineering stuff, but, like, they managerially, like, use a lot of the other countries around them. And Norway only has its independence because it has oil fields. If it didn't have oil fields, its only major export is salmon.
Yeah. But nobody gives a flying fuck about Denmark in Europe, generally. And the next thing is, at least in terms of how they're taxing cars, at least at that point you can say they hate Germans, because they're taxing German cars so ridiculously high, it's utterly impossible to buy a German car there.
I'm going to buy a customized Audi R8 and drive it through Denmark just to fuck with people now.
A base Audi A4 in Germany costs like something between 30 and 35,000, the very base model.
Yeah.
The same model in Denmark, just because of taxes, is roughly around 80,000 euros.
That's amazing.
Yep.
So I imagine like having an R8 and buying it in Germany and then just driving it into Denmark just to piss people off would be some shit.
There's a good chance that you will have a very individual design paint shop afterwards, in terms of you will get a lot of scratches.
I'd make it nod colored. I'd style it after a Raider buggy. I don't give a shit.
Yeah. But yeah, that could happen. The Danes have